right. Hi, Krista. Hi, Momtellectuals.
Hello.
We'll got Krista back for part 2. In case this is the first time you're watching, and in case you can always go and watch part 1 first, but if you're jumping in at part 2, Krista, can you just introduce yourself a little bit more, and then we'll get started talking about how to deal with other people's pushback when you personally define success.
I love it. So hi, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Krista Rizzo. I'm a transformational life coach, reinvention expert, corporate speaker, and all the things in between. I've been doing this for several years. Author. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I forget sometimes. And I help people and corporations bust the myth of perfection by overcoming struggle to do the work to get to the other side. So we're having a really fun conversation about this, and we are about to continue. So let's go.
All right. So we talked in episode 1, we focused, part of the conversation was about perfectionism, and that can feel like trying to make other people happy, but I kind of consider that internal pushback. Like we have to deal with our own stuff.
Yep.
But what about external pushback, like not being supported by family? And this may be your circumstances or just stories you know from other people. I know you're not going to violate confidentiality or anything like that. But it would be really helpful, I think, for listeners, especially if they've read my book and they've done the work to try to redefine success and feel successful instead of just checking off the boxes and experiencing burnout like you did and you talked about in episodes 13 and 14, which you can also go back and listen to. Just, do you have suggestions when people see you shift your life? And what is that saying? Like, people don't want you to change.
I think that's part of it. I think a lot of external pushback that you get from other people it's more about them than it is about you, right? There's their fear of change. There is maybe some jealousy in there, right? There is a nervousness that comes when other people see their friends or people they know growing and expanding and maybe educating themselves and maybe shifting their mindsets about certain things or making different decisions based on information that they have digested more recently than what they believed in the past, right? We touched on that a little bit in the first episode in this conversation, but I think the education around helping other people not be so judgmental, for lack of a better word, because I feel like pushback is it's 100% about judgment, right? When someone's pushing back on you, they're judging you because of whatever it is that they're dealing with. And you don't know, none of us know what's going on in most people's lives that we know in 100%. Right? I can have a best friend for 50 years and I might know 90% of what's happening in her life, and I probably don't know 10 of it. The same way same thing for her. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know everybody that you know to the full extent of knowing them.
And sometimes you don't know why you yourself are feeling. I mean, that was
100%.
That was partially what led me to writing The Paradox of Success in the first place, because I checked off all the things that were supposed to make me feel successful and happy, and I was miserable. And how can I be so broken that I'm not happy all the time?
Right.
So it took me a lot of personal growth to even figure out what was going on inside me.
Yeah. And that's normal. And I think, judgment is normal, unfortunately, right? Because people are seeing things and they're like, wait a minute, maybe I want to do that. Or maybe they're never going to be able to be successful because they're afraid that if you become successful or if you change, maybe you're not going to have time for them anymore. Maybe your relationship is going to change, right? I can tell you that there were a lot of relationships in my life in the last 7 years since I started my business that have definitely shifted. And some of the best advice I ever got from one of my dad's best friends, when I said I was going to do this, I was getting pushback from a lot of people, and he pulled me aside. He's super successful in real estate. And he pulled me aside and he said, "Do you think you can do this?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Are you sure you think you can do it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why?" And he's like, "Because I know you can do it." He said, "And there's going to be a lot of people who are going to believe that you can't.
Mhm.
So never for a minute doubt yourself. You're going to have, trust me." He's like, "But always believe that you can do this." And that kind of along the lines of like the quote that we talked about in the last conversation, like that changed my thought process,
Mhm.
right? Always believe that you can do this. Always have your reason, right? Who is Simon Sinek talks about your why. He's
Yeah.
what that means for you. And that's different for every single person. And so somebody might be judging you or pushing back on you based on what their why is, I wouldn't do that because X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
Yeah, but you're not me. And so I'm doing it because of X, Y, and Z.
And if,
Right. So
if you were in line with their values, or at least on the surface, you looked like you were living life like they choose to, I think it maybe can be very defensive. Like
yeah,
it can be, oh, you're going and you're doing this thing, you're rejecting my life.
right.
And I think especially with family members, that might be a really key part. And you're right, it's about them, it's not about
Yeah.
you. But it can also be out of fear, or when you challenge someone's identity, it's a very emotional response, but people often don't know why. It can take a lot of digging to figure out. Like, that's one thing from the difficult conversations literature that I find fascinating. It's like, it's not about the facts, but the facts bring up emotion, but the emotion is usually there because the facts somehow challenge your identity. And but it's so hard to figure out, what is this saying about me that I am getting so upset about this?
Right. Yeah. And I think, look, I mean, the last 2.5 years have taught us something, right? We have, I think it has. But like living through an unexpected global pandemic, I don't know, kind of changes you, right? But all the other stuff that surfaced during this pandemic, right? I mean, I live in the United States, everybody. It is not the greatest place on the planet when it comes to politics and, social and racial unjust and all the things that we have going on here. And so a lot of uncomfortable conversations have happened with me amongst people that I care about. I was very, very vocal when the whole George Floyd stuff happened a couple of years ago. And I called all of my Black friends and I was like, we need to talk right now. I need to be educated. I voluntarily stepped out of a comfort zone because I wanted not only to be a supporter or an ally or anti something for the people that I care about in my life, who just so happen to have different skin color than I do. And that's the only difference, right? But that is uncomfortable for people. And you talk about these, and you want to talk about pushback? Oh, a lot of pushback, a lot. Like, how could you be having these conversations, right? Because people are conditioned to believe things. We're not born to believe those things. We are taught to believe those things. And a lot of people had to have, a come to Jesus meeting with themselves about, maybe I was taught the wrong things to believe.
Yeah. I mean,
and that I think has a lot of pushback in it.
I mean, there's an episode in this podcast that I did with, actually, I think it was in a different, I have several podcasts, but I did an episode, a friend of mine and I, who's also white, we have a couple mutual friends who are Black, and we invited them. We had already established some trust.
Yeah.
So they were willing to come and talk, because it is a very, it was in the moment. It was very near
charged
to when it happened, and they were very gracious to come and talk and just say, and I said, like, we're probably going to say something wrong or come across as insensitive in some way, but that's why these conversations don't happen. Because, and I remember the night before having that conversation, I was lying in bed as my hamster wheel turned about how I was going to make myself look like an idiot. What dumb thing was I going to say? And then I was like, Tamsen, you're afraid of looking stupid. You're not afraid of getting shot while you walk down the street.
Right. Right. Right.
Maybe that's a come to Jesus moment.
Yes.
But that was like, it is worth having this conversation, even if I look as stupid as possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I don't understand.
Right. Right. Help me understand. And I think, my tip about the pushback piece on the people for people out there who have experienced it is, really being okay with people pushing back on you, number one, right? And that really does take it takes a lot of mindset work. It takes a lot of self-confidence. It takes just a lot of belief in yourself, and you're not always going to have it, right? You will also have those moments of self-doubt, and you'll have those, but you are prepared and you have the tools to be able to recognize that, oh my gosh, why am I going here right now? Right. So I think I oftentimes like to say, if someone says to me, what if it doesn't work out? And then I like to say, well, but what if it does? Right. But what if it does? Because if it doesn't, it's okay. Well, then I tried. Right. I'd rather fail. Like Michael Jordan is famous for saying, I've failed more times than I've succeeded. And that is literally on the gym door in my son's elementary school. Okay. Like, I have failed more times than I have succeeded, but I got up every single time. And look I'm Michael Jordan. Come on.
Well, wasn't it Babe Ruth who has I don't know if he still does, but something like the world record for home runs, but also the world record for strikeouts?
Yeah. Yeah. Like,
they come together.
Right. And who are you to tell me what that success should feel like? Right? Like, I marvel at social media every day because I'm not a big Twitterer. I don't like to tweet. I don't like, my husband does it.
It's too fast
it's part of his job. So, but it's like, who are all these people who think they know better than the person who's actually doing it? Right? Like, it's so fun to like be able to sit on a couch and criticize everybody else. But what have you done?
I'm too busy.
Right? Like, it's like, I have no time for that nonsense. But it's like, that's when people, especially people I don't know, and people I don't know are pushing back at me, I often say, have you done this? Question mark. Right. So here's a perfect example. I was just running for this board of education. So here's a little backstory. I typically in the past have lived in New York City my whole life. And raised our kids there. And then this global pandemic happened, I don't know, a couple of years ago. And we had a home in a very rural part of Connecticut in the United States. And we went there for temporarily. I'm still here, everybody. Like, I still have a place in New York City, but we decided to transfer our kids to school up here because in the city, they were not going back to school that first year. And they were going here because we live in a very rural little town. And so now I have, as part of my just being a parent, I've always been invested in my kids' educations and how they work. And especially in New York City, that's a whole different animal when you're sending your kid to public school there, right? So it was very important to me to get involved at the very beginning. And so when we moved our kids here, we've owned our home here for 10 years. So I'm active in the community as a participant, as like a bystander, but I wasn't until 2 years ago that we moved here full time. Well, now my kids are going to school here. So I have plunged into the conversation of education and things. And then we're doing this big merger of schools. And so I decided, I know I've only been here for 2 years in the school system, but I'm going to run because I have experience from here. And I have been alive longer than a lot of the people who are also running. And I've got business experience and I'm also a coach. And so I've got a lot of different things that I can bring to this table that I think would be very helpful for a place that is so small that everybody else has literally been born and raised here. They don't have any other outside experience. And I actually won. And somebody was arguing with me on social media, not even arguing with me, but talking about why they didn't think this merger of these two school districts was a good idea. And their conversation, in my mind, warranted no merit because I have friends and they were talking about high school rankings. We're merging 2 high schools and 2 middle schools because our population is dwindling here. And we have these giant facilities, and it's like, why are we doing this? Why are we spending all this money when we should really be streamlining and making academics better and doing better for our children? And that's what the whole thing is about this new school district. And so one parent is like, but this high school is ranked higher than this high school. And if we put them together, our kids are not going to get into college. And I was like, this is the hill you want to die on right now? How about I do a little bit of research for you? And so I called friends of mine who work in higher education in, oh, by the way, like Columbia University, at Fordham University, at like very big, super successful schools. And I literally asked them, how important are high school rankings for you when you're choosing your new academic scholars to join your institutions? And every single one of them was said, 0%. We don't care about that. We look at each individual student. It doesn't matter, like if they pass the academic rigor classes that you guys are presenting to them, and they did it in a way that aligns with our university, we don't care how high or low your school is. Like the kids getting it, like it doesn't matter.
Do they still have the SATs there?
They're optional in most schools.
Okay.
So it's test optional. They take them. My son just took them recently and he did very well. But every school that we're talking to is like, oh, it's test optional, so you don't even have to send it in.
Okay. Because I mean, that was one way of
right,
anyway,
eliminating.
This is going off.
It's a different conversation.
Tangent.
But like the push, but my point is the pushback that you get from people a lot of times is inaccurate and isn't even like valid.
Yeah.
Right. And if you take that to heart, that's on you. Right. You have to make that choice. It's all about the choices that we make. People are going to push back on you for the dumbest stuff all day long. In real life, they are.
And I mean, I agree with you totally about, you mentioned basically trolling, like people who are criticizing just because they want to, because they get joy out of making people miserable. And those people
go away.
Whatever. But people who, even if my general philosophy about it, just if someone says you suck, that's not helpful. No. If someone just says my book sucks, that's not helpful.
That's not helpful. No, like why?
But it's also, oh, your book is great. That's also not helpful.
Right. But, I need some context.
Right. But it's so interesting. I really like assuming or trying to assume. Yes, context matters. What people say matters. But why? Like, why do you think? Can I get more information? Because I really try to put on the information seeking hat, right? Because when you get into when you get upset, when you get into an emotional state, quite often it's, you feel like you know what the truth is.
Right.
And then it just becomes, what is it? Information delivery.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell this person the truth. I'm going to tell them what the facts that they need to know, and then they're going to agree with me. That almost never happens.
Never.
So if both people are in that place, it's like,
yeah.
But if even one person can just say, can you give me more information about that?
Right.
I don't understand, but I think it's because you have information that I don't
know about, or right.
And like you're saying, the 10% of your best friend, there's 10% of stuff in their head or in their life that you don't know about. Maybe that's the clue to why they're disagreeing with you. And I think, so I guess if I have a tip for pushback, I'd be like, so why do you think that?
Why? Yeah.
And you may get useful information. You may get information like, if I get pushed back, my book is bad, and I ask why, and they tell me something that says they are not the intended audience for this book.
Great.
Then
right.
Well, then this book was not meant to help with the problem you thought.
Right.
So maybe I need to change the title or maybe description, or maybe I need to do something to better convey who shouldn't buy the book.
You're reading the book. Right.
But also, if it wasn't for you and you bought it anyway, and because you're saying, I can't heal the world. Right. Or if someone says, I read your book and it didn't help me, I'm like, well, did you do the work? Because there's questions, and you can't just I'm hoping people will read the book and it will twig some
Prompt
things.
them. Yeah.
Right. And if people want to read the book for that, that's fine. But there's also a lot of work that you could do from
Yes.
that book.
And that's, again, that's another thing with the pushback, right? It's like anytime someone I know personally has pushed back on me, I go right to, well, can you give me more information on that? Or why? Or how come? Or what do you think? Or then I'll reframe it and with well, what if it does? Like there's so many different ways to address that and talk about it with people if you're willing to do that work yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm willing to have a conversation with anybody about anything, even if it's uncomfortable, because I've done the work. And none of us particularly like the uncomfortable ones. Right. But there are a lot of people out there who are not, because they're just not comfortable.
Mutual respect. I am. As soon as the respect leaves.
Oh, but that's yes. Oh yeah. Like we don't need to be cursing at each other because we believe two different things, but and a lot of conversations sometimes will not be resolved, and that's okay. Right. You have to know when to walk away from that, and that other person needs to know when to walk away from that, because this is not fixable. But I need you to hear what I have to say. If you're pushing back on me, you're definitely going to hear what I have to say, because I'm going to ask you why. I'm going to ask you I need to better understand it. I'm going to ask you, what if it does work out? I'm going to ask, like, why are you telling me this? Yeah. What's happening?
I find too, disagreements or pushback, or they can be at a factual level, but they can also be at a values level. And the factual level, I was having a conversation with somebody about vaccination, and we just disagreed. We got our news from very different sources. And so we were never going to agree on what the facts were.
Right.
And we can just say, okay, well, this is where the disagreement is. This is why we're disagreeing. I don't believe your experts. You don't believe my experts.
Right.
We're going to continue to disagree. But there was also a disagreement on values and how responsible we need to be to other people in the world. Right. So it was both things.
Yeah.
And where I still get pushback, and I sometimes still struggle with it, is since I'm a business owner, people, well, how much money do you make? How successful are you financially? And I'm like, you know what? Not a lot, but at the same time, it's not unimportant. Like people say, well, you don't have a business, then you have a hobby. I'm like, oh, so putting me down gets you where?
Right. And wait, but I think this is another, I blame the internet for this one too, right? I blame people for equating success with a dollar amount.
A lot of people do.
Right. And I think I probably did too at some point in my life. I'm not successful if I'm not making six figures or multiple six figures or more, because I see all these people, especially when I started my own business. I was like, oh my God, everybody here makes millions of dollars. How is this the truth? It's not, number one. And number two, I quickly realized that what I need financially is different than what you need financially. Right. And what the person sitting next to me or down the street lives down, right? Like everyone's, again, definition of success is different. And so you have the right answer. How much do you make? Enough. And I am success. I have written a book. Have you written a book? Have you done this? You know what I mean? Because people like to be like, okay, well, you're not making that, then you must not be successful. I'm super successful. I'm super successful.
Yeah, I've done the work and I've looked at what makes me feel successful and what I want.
Right.
And money is number 6.
Right.
It's not unimportant, but to be successful in business, like my number one has to be, I have a special needs son who's relatively young. All of a sudden my work time got cut in half with him being home full time with the pandemic, and we're still doing online school. The most important thing that I get out of my business is being flexible enough that I can be there for him when he needs me. That is number one. And in that context as well, my husband has a good job and pays the mortgage.
Right.
Like, so it's also privilege that of course financial gets to be number 6. And I fully accept that.
Yeah.
but I also want joy. I want my work to bring me joy.
Yeah.
I want it to be consistent with my values. I actually want to feel like I'm helping people.
Yeah.
And I want to change the world. I want to be helping people in a way that's really consistent with my values and my what I see my purpose in the world is. And I can't give up any of that for money.
No, for money.
Or I
Me
will
too.
feel,
Right.
I will hate my life.
Right. And, it's, I find it's especially having your own business, it's fascinating, right? I have some friends who own their own businesses and they are astronomically successful, right? But they are product based. We're service based. So it's very different, right?
Yeah.
I also have some friends who are scraping the bottom of the barrel, just trying to make it ends meet. And we've all been there. We've all been at whatever different levels we feel of our success should be. But when you actually look at it and people are looking at you, judging you for that, it's like, again, that's not my problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I make for you might not be enough, but it's enough for me. And it's enough for me to be happy and successful and be able to accomplish those 5 things before number 6. And that's,
yeah.
And half of the time it doesn't even deserve an explanation. It's like, I'm happy, man, leave me alone, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I
how
have a
can I
different
help you be
definition of
happy? How can
success
I
than
help
you.
you be happy?
Yeah.
Right.
And I also can't get away from the fact that my father owned his own business and was very financially successful and had a lot of, and I know from that growing up, I knew a lot of extremely wealthy people who were extremely unhappy. So money does not solve all your, money can't bring you joy. Money can't keep your kids away from drugs. It's usually the opposite.
It's that, yeah. Accessibility is a thing.
Extreme. It's extreme.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people who went through a lot of, money can't make you happier. It can relieve some basic money stress.
Sure.
And it's a great tool, but it can also cause a lot of problems.
Yep. Agreed. But again, it goes back to, like we're at this point, like, we're going to keep saying the same thing, but it's like, it really does come down to, if someone's pushing back on you, it's mostly about them and not about you. And really, if it's something that you're interested in learning more about, it comes down to asking open-ended questions to get to the root of what their issue is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, why are you asking me this question? Or why is this, I feel like this is bothering you. Why is this bothering you?
Why is my definition of success bothering you?
A decision that I just made is bothering you. I need to understand why this is uncomfortable for you. And there's a lot of it, like you can have a lot of different, and you might actually have a conversation where somebody confesses to say, I wish I had your guts. I wish I had, the gumption to get out there and like quit my job and start over at whatever. I was 41 years old when I did that, when I was 41 and like started something new. I wish I had that. And maybe that's what that conversation is about. Or maybe it's, I don't feel like I could ever be what you're doing. And maybe that's what's bothering me. Or maybe I just think you're wrong. Well, I'm sorry that you think I'm wrong, but I think I'm right. Right? Like it could be a lot of different, could be a lot of different things. So I think, rebutting pushback is important and trying to investigate it is important, but not at the sake of your own personal joy and mental health, right? Like don't have the argument if you're just don't.
Sometimes agreeing to disagree and
I hate to say agree to disagree because it's like, but like, yeah, like it's not about winning. And for a lot of people it is, right? A lot of people, it's about winning. And it's like, this is not a game.
Right.
It's not a game.
It's your life.
It's your life. Your life is not a game. And there's a lot of things that we learn along the way that kind of gets us to the point where it's like, this is too important for me to make this a thing. This person over here is having a hard time with what I'm doing. I've got 2 kids. I've got a life. I've got a business. I've got my pandemic puppy. I've got my husband. I've got all these things because we did that. That stuff matters more. Yeah. It's perspective based.
Awesome. And I think this is our second half hour. I think that's a great spot to end it. Thank you very, very much.
My pleasure.
Bye, Momtellectuals. If you have not watched part 1, go back and watch part 1. And if you're interested in the beginning and how Krista did create her own personal definition of success and why HELP is your favorite 4-letter word. I think the episode is even called Help Me.
Oh, it might be. Yeah.
Help Me, part 1 and part 2. I looked at it earlier today. Why moms often find it really hard to ask for help.
Yep.
And why we need to kind of get over that. And you shared some tips about that.
Yep.
So it was really helpful. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So happy you
Bye,
can come
everybody.
back.
Me too.